All right. Thank you guys for coming this morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about exercise and fitness, and I'm going to talk about the other benefits outside of just being healthy. Okay, so obviously everyone exercises to be healthy, but there are a lot of other things that go along with it. So I'm going to cover 3 aspects of exercise that you don't necessarily think as much about. And then Trevis, our nutritionist, is not going to talk about nutrition today. She's going to talk about stressors in life and how you can recognize them, and a couple of things that you can do to help move forward from them. Okay? So whenever you guys have any questions, you're welcome to raise your hand. I'm going to try to leave some time at the end of my talk to have some questions, and then we'll leave some time at the end of Trevis's talk as well. All right? Sound good? Okay, so like I said, exercise is more than just being healthy. Obviously that's important, but there are other aspects of exercise that a lot of people don't appreciate as much. All right? So the first one I want to start with is cognitive ability. And this is one that really no one thinks about when you talk about exercise. All right? So with cognitive ability, with your brain, whenever you move, the more that you learn, whenever you learn something new, whenever you move and you move a new way, or just anytime you move in general, you make connections in your brain, neural connections, okay? It's called neuroplasticity, okay? A little fancy word, right? I make things up every once in a while, so I'm not going to tell you what I make up and what I don't. Laugh? No? Thanks. Okay, no more jokes. So neuroplasticity increases every time you do something. So if you do the same move over and over again, the neuroplasticity will increase. The more that connection happens, the better that you become at it. Okay? So like for instance, the more that you do a squat. The more you do a squat, the more your body makes the connection, the more your mind understands how to do it. Okay? The more your body understands how to do it. A lot of times in exercise, people refer to this as muscle memory. Okay? So your muscles don't have brains. Okay? But your nervous system is there. So your nervous system is actually what's remembering, okay, what to do. So with neuroplasticity, the connection between actual learning more outside of just exercise and movement itself, you have what's called your cerebellum in the back of your brain right here, okay, and then you have your prefrontal cortex right here. Your cerebellum controls movement, okay? This is what controls movement. As you move, it figures out what you're doing, okay? And then your prefrontal cortex in the front of your brain helps with cognition. So it helps you learn, and it helps you understand as you learn. The interesting thing is they are interdependent. So whenever one is damaged, the other one doesn't function as well. So if your cerebellum gets damaged, your learning ability outside of movement gets damaged as well. You see? So that's with cognitive ability. The next one that I want to talk about, I'm a little better at these other two, so I'm not going to fumble through them quite as much. Number 2 is mobility. And there are a lot of important aspects of mobility, okay? So as we age, there are tonic and phasic muscles. Phasic muscles are the muscles that we have that tighten over time, all right? We actually had a question about this in Thrive TV this week, okay? Someone asked about rhomboids and traps, right? And so we'll talk about rhomboids in a second, but phasic muscles are muscles that tighten over time, all right? And there are 8 phasic muscles. So you spell phasic like this. And my writing's okay today, so that's good. So our 8 phasic muscles are our traps, our biceps, our pec minor, our pec major, our psoas, I should have run over this again, quadratus lumborum, our hamstrings, and our calves. So the reason that those are the muscles that tighten over time, Hoy, come up here real quick. Bring your chair with you. Face the front door for me, and go ahead and take a seat. And act like you're typing, all right? Yeah, like a normal person, not like I want you to. So he knew I was going to break him down. That's why he sat up straight. So go ahead and type. So traps are here. All right, notice his shoulders are rolled forward a little bit. His pec major and his pec minor are here. Okay, notice again his shoulders are rolled forward a little bit. His biceps are here. Sorry, I just punched you in the face. His biceps are here. Notice his elbows are bent. Okay, his psoas connects inside of his leg and in his lumbar spine. Notice because of his legs flex like this. That's in a flexed position as well. His hamstrings are back here. Notice his knees bent, so his hamstring is shortened, and then his calves are down at the bottom. His calves connect at the top of his leg. Actually, everyone's, not just his. Connect at the top of his leg. Therefore, because of the knee being bent, they're shortened as well. Okay? Your QLs on the side of your hip, your quadratus lumborum, that, again, with your leg being flexed like this, you can relax your fingers. With your leg being flexed like this, it's in a shortened position. So, go ahead and you can get back in your spot. Thanks, Hoy. So those are the 8 muscles that tighten, that tighten over time. And I just called that wrong. Did I call those phasic muscles? Those are tonic muscles. I did. Whoops. I just messed everyone up.
Oh, wait a minute. That wasn't where you needed me to interject.
Tonic. That was where I needed you to interject. Okay? So we have traps, major, minor, bicep. I have to double check myself just to make sure I'm saying all of these things. QL, hamstring, and calf. Good. 8. Perfect. All right. So there are 3 important ways to be able to fight this, okay? Your body's constantly wanting to tighten. Again, all these muscles are wanting to shorten as you get older, all right? There are 3 important ways, things that you can do, okay, on a regular basis in order to fight this, all right? So, the first one is stretching. Stretch. And there are 2 types of stretching. Trevis, dynamic, and static. Okay, there are more than 2 types of stretching, but these are the ones that most people understand about, okay? I asked for that because this is another thing that we just went over on the last Thrive TV episode. So there are dynamic stretches and static stretches, okay? Static stretch, if I told you to stretch, okay, what would you do? Bend over and touch your toes, put your hamstring, your leg out like this, bend over and grab your toe, lean to the side like this, okay? So static just means getting into a position and holding the position for an amount of time, all right? So that's the stretching that we've all done forever. Dynamic stretching is the same thing but going through the motion, okay? So instead of just getting into a lunge position and staying in the position, you get in and then get out, and then get in and get out, and then get in and then get out, okay? Does that make sense? So that's the difference between the 2. With stretching, you're not actually talking about mobilizing, okay? So I said that we have mobility issues as we get older. With stretching, you're going to talk about mobilizing. Mobilizing is more talking about joints and mobilizing joints. However, obviously we're talking about tonic muscles and how they tighten, but those muscles have an effect on your joints. So with stretching, we want to make sure that they stay long enough to be able to have ranges of motion in our joints. All right? Which one's better? So static stretching, again, is the thing that we've done the most of. However, with static stretching, especially around exercise, it hasn't been proven to be as beneficial as we thought that it was. Okay? There are a whole bunch of reasons for that, but simply, it's not something that you have to do before your exercise in order to not be injured. All right? However, it's something that is important to do. All right? In order to actually lengthen a muscle, you have to hold it for 60 seconds or more. And the problem is when most of us static stretch, we hold it for 20 to 30 seconds. All right? So all you're really doing is making it is stretching it beyond its ability for a second and then relaxing, and that actually makes it somewhat more susceptible to injury before exercise. All right? Not that that's a bad thing. So we do some static stretching before we exercise, but then we dynamic stretch. Okay? So if you static stretch before you exercise, do dynamic stretching or another type of warm-up afterwards. So this is something you can do any time of day. They're both something you can do anytime. But dynamic stretching is what you want to do pre-workout mostly. Okay? Dynamic stretching is what you want to do pre-workout mostly. Pre-workout, you're talking about warming up your muscles. Okay? And that's the important thing, is warming up your body. Getting everything moving so that it can go through full ranges of motion correctly. Does that make sense? All right? So that's what we want to do with dynamic stretching. All right, so that's number one. Number two is actually mobilizing. And like I said, with mobilizing, we're talking about actually moving through joints, moving through ranges of motion in your joints. Okay? Specifically, again, when you saw Hoy up here, Hoy up here sitting, okay? He was slouched over and his knees were tucked up. So as we get old, our hips become tight as we get old. And our T-spine from here to here becomes tight as we get old. We become stiff, we can't rotate side to side, and we can't get into ranges of motion like this. Going laterally is hard for most people. It's hard for most people as you get older. And then also extending your hip like this is hard for a lot of people. Again, your hip capsule just becomes tight, and then your T-spine just becomes tight as you get old. So mobilizing, we're talking about getting joints into ranges of motion. All right? So going through mobilization exercises is something that you want to do. You can do, again, any type of day. And specifically, we want to mobilize our hips, and we want to mobilize our thoracic spine. Am I running out of ink? Nope. That says his, not hips. Hips and thoracic spine. So, Laura, let me grab you real quick, please. I just want to go through one exercise is all I need. One exercise. Right here, facing everybody, all fours, please. Okay? Left leg straight out to the side. Good. Keep your back nice and flat. I want you to take your left hand and drag it inside of your right. Good. And then up to the sky. Nice. Do that about 5 times for me, so 4 more. All right, so she's doing 2 things. She's mobilizing her hip right now. All right, this leg's out to the side. She's stretching her adductor inside of her leg. And she's also mobilizing her T-spine. She's reaching inside, reaching up to the sky. So every time that she reaches, she could probably tell you she's getting a better range of motion each time she reaches. And notice, this is dynamic stretching as well. So you're kind of getting 2 birds with, well, a bunch of birds with 1 stone. All right? You can go ahead and sit down. Thank you. So that's a great stretch that you can do to get hips and T-spine for our mobilizing. And then the last one that we want to do, so we talked about stretching, we talked about mobilizing, and working out. So when I say working out, I don't just mean working out. When I say working out, I mean resistance training, and I mean doing it correctly. So if you go into a regular fitness facility and you watch someone squat, if you watch 5 people squat, you'll probably watch 5 different squats. You'll see 5 completely different things, okay? You'll see some people go quarter, you'll see some people go half, you'll see some people go way down here, and you'll see some people go to actual parallel. You'll see some knees come in, you'll see some knees go out. So you'll see a bunch of different things. The important thing with resistance training is range of motion when you're talking about being able to stay mobile. So if you look at a lot of exercises and stretches, okay, so like a lunge. So this can be used as a dynamic stretch, right? But this is also an exercise. If you put weight in your hands, now I made it an exercise. If I go through the range of motion correctly, while I'm exercising, then I'm getting I'm getting dynamic stretching while I'm exercising. Does that make sense? So working out means going through good range of motion. Okay? So those are our 3, 4. Mobilizing. So we've talked about cognitive ability and how our movement is connected to learning. We've talked about mobilizing, and finally, we're going to talk about my personal favorite, and that is strength and hypertrophy. Slash. That's 2 things, but you're doing them both. So hypertrophy is kind of a fancy word. It just means putting on muscle. All right? That's all hypertrophy means. Strength and hypertrophy. So again, as we age, if we do nothing, our muscles want to atrophy. They want to just go away. Our brain will just go away. You'll lose cognitive function. Your heart, again, it's a muscle, so if you don't use it, it will go away. And heart disease and so on and so forth. So strength and hypertrophy, building strength, continually trying to build strength and build muscle as you get older is extremely important for joint function, brain function, and so on and so forth. With these 2, again, we have tonic and phasic muscles. I already told you that phasic muscles were tonic muscles. They're actually tonic muscles and not phasic muscles. Did you get all that? Because I just confused you some more. So before we talked about the tonic muscles, the 8 tonic muscles, okay? This time, these are phasic muscles, okay? And there are 7 of these, all right? So there are 7 phasic muscles, and phasic is spelled just like I put it up there last time when I confused everybody. So we have rhomboids, low trap, because your traps actually run from your neck halfway down your thoracic spine. You have triceps, deltoids, external obliques, deep abdominal muscles, and last but not least, pressure's on. The money maker.
Oh. Glutes, the fountain of youth. If we do what I think you're going to do, we're not going to do it. Great page share and pop up.
All right. Last but not least, we call the glutes the fountain of youth around here. Okay? If you have strong glutes, then I don't want to say the rest of it doesn't matter, but you're doing very well for yourself if you keep your butt strong. If you notice, if you just observe people as they walk around, a lot of people look like this and, you know, little short choppy steps, and it just looks like straight from here all the way down to the floor. Okay, so there is no bump behind them. All right, that's again from doing what everyone's doing right now, which is a little ironic, but that's from sitting. Okay, so when you sit, you don't have to use your butt. You don't have to use your butt. You don't have to use your abdominal muscles. You don't have to use your obliques. You don't have to use any of this either, but that's a whole nother point. But these three especially, you don't have to use when you sit. Okay, the back is supporting you. The seat itself is supporting you, so that eliminates your butt, and the back of the seat eliminates your core and your obliques. All right. So, what do we do to do this? We work out. That fixes a lot of things. Resistance train. So when we resistance train, we have 6 human movements that we do all the time. All right? 6 basic human movements that we do all the time. We do push all the time. You push things away from you, you push things overhead. We do pull all the time. You pull things off the ground like this, you pull things towards you. We do squats all the time, squat down, pick things up. We do hinge all the time, hinge, you hinge over and pick something up like this. We do carries all the time, so holding grocery bags in each hand and going for a walk. And then the last thing that we like to call basic human movement is everything else. And everything else is literally everything else. So everything else for us is groundwork, core work, and things like that. Making all the connections, all right? So we have 6 human movements that we do. Push, pull, hinge, squat, carry, and everything else. So, again, if you go into a normal fitness center, there are a couple things that you will see a lot of, okay? You'll see a lot of this, and you'll see a lot of this. So you'll see a lot of pushing. You'll see a lot of bench press and shoulder press and more bench press and more shoulder press and maybe some push-ups and things like that, okay? And then you'll see a lot of squatting, maybe some leg extension stuff. So things that work the front of your body, okay? Bench press, shoulder press, and things that work the front of your body. So if we're fighting this position, okay, we already talked about our chest tightening as we get older. So if we're fighting this position, but we're constantly doing this all the time, okay, that's just tightening these muscles more. So push-ups and bench press and things like that, and just squats, those are just tightening the front of your body more. Okay, so it's just pulling you into this position more. So we want to make sure that we really incorporate pulls and hinges. Okay, and then these two are equally as important. Carries are something that is greatly underappreciated in most people's training programs, okay? So we do things like suitcase carry, waiter carry, farmer's carry, and combinations of all of that. But anyway, before I go too far, so how do you want to put this kind of stuff together? And I'll give you kind of an example of each movement and how you want to do it. You want to do every movement every day, okay? But that doesn't mean that you do it 7 days a week, all right? Because there's a point of diminishing returns with everything, and that includes exercise, all right? If you exercise 7 days a week for a long time, your body will start to shut down. Exercise is stress. Obviously, you know that stress is bad for you, right? Well, exercise is stress as well. In moderation, it's great for you. In abundance, it's bad for you. So whenever you resistance train, it's something that you want to do, we'll say 3 days a week, all right? So if we're doing 3 days a week, we want to do the whole body. We want to do a push, pull, hinge, squat, carry, and then everything else every day. So all we want to do is group them together. So if we just break them up into 3s, all right, that makes it easy. So we stick an upper body exercise, lower body exercise, and then an accessory with every group. So we're going to do a squat first, okay? And we'll say goblet squat. And then we're going to do a push with it, and we'll call that a push-up, okay? And then we'll do an everything else exercise with that, and we'll call that, we'll say bear crawls, since everyone loves this. All right, so this is going to be our first group. A squat, a push, and then an everything else. All right, so we're going to do a goblet squat, which is just holding a kettlebell in this position and squatting, okay, or a dumbbell in this position and squatting. Then we're going to go and do a push-up right after that, and then we're going to do bear crawls right after that. That's going to be one thing, and we're going to do this, we'll call it for 3 sets. All right? Once we're finished with that, we're going to go to our next group, our next 3 exercises, our next 3 movements, and then we should be good. So that leaves hinge. And we can do hip bridges here. And then pull. Okay, and we can do, let's say dumbbell rows. And then we have to do a carry at the end. And we can do suitcase carry. Okay, so we have to do a hinge, we have to do a pull, and we have to do a carry. We'll do hip bridge, dumbbell row, suitcase carry, do 3 sets of that. You're done in half an hour, all right? You're finished in half an hour, and you've hit the whole body, top to bottom. Good range of motion, 3 sets, and all you need is 1 dumbbell or 1 kettlebell for this exercise, this program I just threw up here, okay? That's all you need. So you don't need a whole slew of equipment. You don't need treadmills and ellipticals. You don't need stuff like that, okay? All you need is 1 dumbbell or 1 kettlebell, and you can have, I mean, basically the world at your fingertips with that, okay? So, work to improve the things that we talked about. Make sure that as you resistance train, go through full ranges of motion, okay? That's staying mobile as you get older is the most important thing, okay? And that's what a lot of people fight. Again, obviously you want to be healthy. Your cholesterol and your blood pressure and things like that. Exercise resistance training is going to help all that as well. It's going to help it a lot. However, what we don't appreciate a lot is the range of motion, is the mobility, is the strength, is the power that we lose as we get old. And those are the things that when you see someone who's 70, 75, 80 years old, the average 70, 75, 80-year-old, whenever they scoot around like this or they have a walker or they can't get up and down, they just don't have the power anymore. They don't have muscle. They've, things like osteoporosis. That's because you're not putting force onto your bones. Whenever you don't put external force onto your bones, they quit producing the things that they need to produce in order to be strong and make the connection. So it just goes away and they become weak and brittle. It's all a matter of just continuing to move and continuing to force your body to become better. Okay? So I think that's it. I went through that a lot quicker than I thought I was going to. That's because the first group I missed a couple things in the first group. That's all right. All right. Anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when you brought him up in his
Yep.
chair,
Yep.
that's what I do all day, is sit and
Yep.
type. So I need to get up and move more during the day,
Yep.
because I sit there 8 to 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
So what would be an example of a routine based on what you just showed us?
Sure.
But it would be kind of quick that I could do
Sure.
at work in my office, for 5 minutes or maybe 3 to 5 minutes.
Sure.
That would get me out of my chair
Mm-hmm.
and do some movement.
Sure.
I do have some hip issues.
Sure.
My hips bother me, so.
Fantastic question. How often would you be able to get up and move around? As often as you want, really?
As often as I could make myself.
Sure.
We put everything else aside
Sure.
and do it.
Sure. So, number one, I think a lot of times we sit down and we get caught up in our work, right? So, before you know it, 2 hours is gone and you've just sat there for 2 hours zoned in, right? So I think that happens. If it's something that you want to do, setting some sort of alarm to wake you up and remind you to do it, number one, is important, so that it becomes a habit to do it, right? So a lot of times we just need an external cue to remind us to get up and move around, all right? So once we have that external cue and once we make it a habit to actually get up and move, like just getting up and walking around your office is a great start. However, there are better things that you can do. So, Laura, I already picked on you. Kevin, I'm not allowed to pick on you. Trevi.
Angie.
I'm not just for it.
I think Jeff is.
I think Jeff.
I think Jeff is too. All right, so
Which I did. On that floor.
right back down here. Face this way for me, please, down on all fours. Okay, left leg straight out to the side. So this is going to be the same thing I'm going to show you the same exact thing again that she did first, okay? Then we're going to go through a couple after this, okay? Take this left arm, slide it inside of your right, and then up to the sky 4 times for me, okay? Keep your eyes on your hand, all right? Now, notice Jeff's pretty stiff. Notice he doesn't have quite as good a range of motion, and that's just, it's a combination of a couple things. Number one, his size, okay? His height has a lot to do with it. But go ahead and come over here and face the wall for me, all right? So that's going to be one thing that you can do, get down and stretch, because the inside of your legs, your adductors tend to tighten. Just from sitting, you never get out into that range of motion. And then, we talked about your thoracic spine, your T-spine stiffening up. Rotating your spine like that, okay, is going to be great to loosen that up. And then also the pec muscles that we talked about and the biceps that we talked about reaching up to the sky. Now the second thing that I'm going to show you to do is going to loosen up the front of your leg. So as you sit, your hip flexor and your quad is in this position, okay? So it naturally, or it's going to start to tighten up as well, okay? So what we're going to do is show you something that is going to loosen that up. So scoot back away from the wall a little bit for me. Keep your right knee down, put your left foot out in front, okay? And put your left toe all the way to the wall, all right? And then all that I want you to do is take your hips and push them to the wall. Try and touch your knees to the wall. You don't have to actually get there, but just try and get there. And then rock back, and then rock forward. Good, and then rock back, and then rock forward. Good, and then 2 more like that. So notice every time he rocks forward, he can get a little closer every time he rocks forward, right? So as he rocks, he's putting his hip into extension like this, okay, which is getting it out of that flex mode. Does that make sense? Okay? So getting him into extension like this and stretching it and mobilizing it dynamically, not just statically stretching it, but mobilizing it dynamically to open it back up. And then the last thing, we talked about glutes being the fountain of youth. On your back, we're going to do some hip bridges, okay? Feet up width apart, good. Toes off the ground, good, okay? Hips up, go ahead and just give me 5. Pause at the top for about 3 seconds, all right? And then this is, again, body weight. You can just do this lying on the ground. So always doing feet are hip width apart, a little bit away from your butt. All you do, hips up off the ground, squeeze your butt as tight as you can, pause at the top for 3 to 5 seconds. Do that 10 to 15 times, 3 sets of 10 to 15 times, okay? So this is a strengthening exercises. This isn't anything necessarily that's going to mobilize anything. However, the glutes need to be strong, okay? That's important. And everything else needs to be mobile, okay? So glutes need to be strong, and then everything else was mobilizing. Thank you, Jeff.
So would you do all 3 moves, like 4 of this on side, 4 on this side?
Yes.
And then, so you do all, both sides?
Yes.
All 3 once every hour if you can? Or would you do just the first hour, and then the hip flexor thing the second hour?
Right.
Just
right.
Starting out, just anything's better than nothing, I guess.
Anything is better than nothing. And obviously that can take, I don't know, 5 to 8 minutes, maybe something like that, depending on how long you take. So, say we did our adductor stretch, and we did that 4 times on each side. And then we did our quad hip flexor stretch 4 times on each side, and then we did our hip bridge. That's not how you spell that. And we did that 10 times. Just do it all once, okay? And then do it all once. And then do it all once, and then do it all once. So if you do it once every hour, and you're there for 8 hours, you've done 8 sets, okay? You've done 8 sets, and you've done 80 hip bridges, and you've mobilized yourself.
Once every hour that would be a lot.
Well, if you've done, even if you do it once every 2 hours, you've done 4 sets. You see what I mean? So you've done 40 hip bridges, and you've mobilized yourself every time. So I would say at least try and do it once before lunch and then once after lunch. Okay? And then if you can, just get up and walk around every half an hour. And literally walk around can just be like walk around your desk a couple times. All right? And that's much better than just getting there and like sitting there. All right? The other thing that Trevis, that was part of our Thrive episode as well, with the shoulders, right? So she asked, I don't remember if it was you or the girl from work. Yeah, Donna. She asked, how can I get my shoulders to neutral, right? So you talk about posture and being able to stay upright. So if I tell you to sit up, a lot of people go like this, right? They just stick their chest out. Well, this is just the opposite of this, all right? So this is bad and this is bad. So you just have to find somewhere in between. So all you want to do, take your shoulders, roll them forward, roll them to your ears, roll them back, and then roll them down. Once they're down, that's neutral, okay? So neutral is in line with everything else. You don't want them here, and you don't want them behind you. So there's always, again, a point of diminishing returns with everything. Too far forward, too far back. That makes sense? Thank you for the question. That was a good question. Yes?
And for the demonstration there,
Yep.
you're going to alternate that too, right? Just one
Each side.
Each side, yeah.
Right. So you're going to do 4 on one side, 4 on the other, and then when you get against the wall, again, 4 into the wall, one leg, 4 into the wall on the other leg. All right, and then your hip bridge, that's obviously 2 legs, so you're just doing a set of 10. Any other questions?
I have a question on going back to the nice lady's question. Would pendulum swings for you with your leg, would that be helpful?
Define pendulum swing.
Standing up with your legs next to the chair. You can lean on your desk, do pendulum swings. It's a dynamic stretch more than anything, but would that be helpful if there's something quick? And you can do interior, you can do behind the desk and go.
Yeah, that'd be all right.
Only because of the desk involved.
I wouldn't,
without being on the floor.
Wouldn't want to kick anybody, I guess, would be my biggest concern, but.
It's not a strength deal,
Yeah.
it's just a dynamic stretch.
Yeah.
Get some blood flowing.
Yeah, that's not a bad one. Deb, do you have a question?
I did.
Yes.
I'm lucky at work that I have one of those balls that
Yeah.
I can sit on.
Yep.
And then I also have a unit that will raise up my desk so
Oh,
I
yeah.
can stand up
Yeah.
and working. So what can I do with that would maximize?
Okay, that's a great question. So I think you asked a similar question last time, right, at the last workshop? Right. So she asked if she should sit on the exercise ball all day. Okay. Now, obviously, that's tiring, right? Sitting on it all day. So what I told her about that was alternate. So like a regular chair, exercise ball, regular chair, exercise ball, and then obviously standing all day is a tiring thing as well, and also not good for you just standing still all day. So sitting still and standing still are both bad. Okay. They're not, again. If you just stand here for 8 hours, or if you just sit here for 8 hours, it's going to have some sort of gravitational issue. Like your body's not going to be happy about it. So somehow figuring out some sort, like half an hour of sitting on the ball, half an hour of sitting in the regular chair, half an hour of standing, or something that's not too some spaced out time, so that it's not too hard to actually translate from one to the next. But I think trying to get a little bit of each, not as much as possible, but if it's an hour of each or half an hour of each, probably is the best way to do that. Okay, so you're kind of maximizing standing and then maximizing sitting, but not doing them for long periods of time. You see what I mean? So not do.
Sit on my ball all day. That's not good. I know it takes a lot of work, but I'm also standing as well, so.
Sure. Well, I mean, if it's not 8 hours a day, right? So you're sitting on the ball for, half an hour, 45 minutes at a time, and then you stand up and then sit back down. It's fine. It's just, it would be like the sitting at the ball for 8 hours at a time. You see what I mean? And not standing up. So obviously not that you're going to literally sit there for 8 hours, but alternating between sitting and standing and sitting and standing. Okay, it's limiting the duration of time that you're doing, but either one. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's a good question.
Could you do some sort of like goblet squat or something as well? Instead of sitting, just do a couple goblet squats and then get back on the ball too, or something to incorporate strength
So if you're sitting down all day, you mean?
Yeah.
And you don't have a raised desk or something like that. So if you're sitting at a normal desk all day, so just something that you can like, you know, if you don't have time to like get up and walk around or something along those lines, getting up and down and doing some squats, that would be a good thing. However, I think the biggest, what you're talking about there, squatting, you're squatting back down basically into a sitting position. So really what you're hoping to maximize is getting just up into a extended position instead of getting back down into, although it's going to get your blood flowing, mobilizing and getting into an extended position is going to help you stretch. Does that make sense? So really when you're talking about being at work and sitting too long, you want more to maximize movement and mobility than strengthening. Does that make sense? So that's a good question though. But you want to be able to do things that help you stay loose, stay mobile, more than things that necessarily strengthen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Nope. All right. I'm all finished. We'll take a 5-minute break. And then we'll let Trevis go. Trevis. I think a lot of people do stuff like that. Not that it's going to hurt you by any stretch. It's not going to be anything that hurts you.
I just didn't know if I needed to do something.
Your hip, like the hip bridges would be great.